Her ex tried to humiliate her in front of everyone, but the millionaire CEO stepped in. "Are you okay, my love? You won't believe what happened when..." The chandelier light shimmered above the ballroom, scattering gold across crystal glasses and silk gowns. The scent of expensive perfume floated in the air, mixed with the low murmur of polite conversations and the occasional burst of laughter. For everyone else, it was just another high society gala. But for Isabella Martins, it was a night she had dreaded ever since the invitation arrived. She shouldn't have come. Every step she took through that crowd reminded her she didn't belong there anymore. The people smiling around her were the same ones who had turned their backs on her a year ago, after Daniel, her ex-boyfriend, had made sure to destroy her reputation. But tonight, she wasn't the naive girl who believed in empty promises. She came to prove to herself that she could walk into the same room as him and not crumble. Her heart stopped the moment she saw him, tall, arrogant, perfectly dressed in a navy blue suit, his arm around another woman. He noticed her immediately, of course. Daniel always had a predator's instinct for attention. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery as he approached. "If it isn't the great Isabella Martins, I almost didn't recognize you without your ambitions." A few people nearby chuckled. The sound sliced through her like glass. She lifted her chin, forcing a smile. "Good evening, Daniel." But he wasn't finished. "I heard you're working as an assistant now. From luxury vacations to coffee runs. Quite the downgrade, isn't it?" Her cheeks burned. The whispers around her grew louder. She wanted to disappear, but her pride held her in place. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Some of us," she said quietly, "prefer earning our success instead of stealing it." His smile vanished, but before he could strike back, the crowd shifted. A presence filled the room, quiet but commanding. Heads turned toward the tall man stepping through the glass doors. Leonardo Vasconcelos, the reclusive CEO of Vasconcelos Group. Every camera in the room subtly tilted his way, every conversation paused. Isabella froze. She hadn't seen him in years, not since that summer when her life was still bright and full of dreams. Daniel frowned. What's he doing here? Leonardo's eyes found Isabella instantly. For a brief second, the world seemed to stop. The noise, the lights, everything fading into silence. He walked straight toward her, ignoring the curious glances. Daniel straightened, his smug expression returning. "Careful, Isabella," he muttered. "Men like him don't..." But Daniel never finished the sentence. Leonardo stopped right in front of Isabella, close enough for her to smell the faint trace of cedar and musk in his cologne. His gaze softened, not with pity, but with something deeper, protective. Then, in a calm, confident voice that carried through the room, he said the words that silenced everyone. "Everything all right, my love?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked. Daniel's face drained of color. Isabella stood frozen, eyes wide, heartbeat thunderous in her ears. She didn't understand what was happening, only that, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small. Leonardo's hand brushed hers gently, as if asking permission. "Let's go," he murmured, offering a soft smile. "You don't belong among people like them." She hesitated, then nodded. Together they walked out of the ballroom, leaving Daniel and his whispers behind. Outside, under the city's golden lights, Isabella finally exhaled. She didn't know why Leonardo had done it, or what it meant. But one thing was certain. This night, meant to humiliate her, had just changed everything. The night air outside the ballroom was cool, carrying the faint hum of the city and the distant sound of traffic. Isabella wrapped her arms around herself, her pulse still racing from what had just happened inside. Her thoughts spun like a storm. Leonardo Vasconcelos, the man who hadn't spoken to her in years, had just walked into that room and called her "my love" in front of everyone. It felt unreal. Leonardo stopped a few steps ahead, his tall figure outlined by the glow of the city lights. He turned toward her, and for the first time, she saw the gentleness behind the strength in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Isabella tried to answer, but her voice trembled. Why did you do that? A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Because I saw someone I once cared about being humiliated, and I don't tolerate cruelty. His words struck her like a whisper from the past. Someone I once cared about. The way he said it sounded almost like a confession, yet filled with distance, as if he were protecting himself from feeling too much. You didn't have to step in, she said, looking down. Now everyone probably thinks I'm important, he interrupted softly. That's what they should think, that you matter because you do. She looked up, stunned. For a moment neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with memories neither dared to mention, of the summer nights when she interned at his company, of glances that lasted too long, of the one goodbye that had never been properly said. Finally, he gestured toward a sleek black car parked nearby. Let me drive you home, Isabella. I can take a taxi, she replied quickly. I insist, Leonardo said, his tone leaving little room for argument, but there was no arrogance in it, just quiet concern. Reluctantly, she nodded. Inside the car, the silence felt different, not heavy but intimate. The soft hum of the engine filled the space as they drove through the city. Isabella stared out the window, watching the lights blur into gold streaks. I didn't expect to see you tonight, she said finally. I didn't expect to go, Leonardo admitted, but a client insisted I make an appearance. Lucky timing, I suppose. She let out a nervous laugh. Lucky isn't the word I'd use. His eyes flicked toward her. You handled him better than you think. I saw the way you held your head high. That takes strength. She bit her lip, her chest tightening. You shouldn't have gotten involved. Daniel, he'll twist this. He always does. Leonardo's jaw clenched. Let him. He's already shown everyone who he really is. Tonight, I just made sure they saw who you are. His words silenced her. The sincerity in his tone left no room for doubt. When the car stopped in front of her small apartment building, Isabella hesitated before reaching for the door. Leonardo, thank you for what you did. But please don't feel responsible for me. He looked at her for a long moment. I don't, he said finally, but that doesn't mean I'll stop caring. Her heart ached at the warmth in his voice. She wanted to ask him why. Why, after all these years, after everything, but the words wouldn't come. Leonardo leaned slightly forward, his gaze steady. I know you don't trust easily anymore, Isabella, but maybe this time you should. And with that, he gave her a soft nod, waiting until she was safely inside the building before driving away. Isabella stood by the window as his car disappeared down the street, her reflection staring back at her. Why now, she wondered. Why him again? She didn't know the answers, only that something had shifted inside her tonight. The humiliation Daniel planned for her had turned into something far greater, the reawakening of a story that fate clearly wasn't finished telling. The morning sunlight streamed softly through Isabella's curtains, painting golden lines across the pale walls. Sleep hadn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his voice again, calm, deep, protective. Everything all right, my love? Those 5 words had turned an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. She rose from bed, still in disbelief. Why had Leonardo said it? Was it just a way to silence Daniel, or did it mean something more? Her heart refused to believe it was just an act. By the time she got to work, whispers were already circling the office like wildfire. Someone had posted photos from the gala. There she was, standing beside Leonardo Vasconcelos, the elusive billionaire, his hand gently resting on hers. Isabella Martins, the CEO's mystery woman? The headline flashed across her phone screen. Her stomach dropped. She sank into her chair, staring at the article. The comments were brutal. Some people called her lucky, others accused her of being manipulative. The same poison Daniel once spread was spreading again, but this time Leonardo's name was attached to hers. A knock at the door broke her spiral of thoughts. Miss Martins, her supervisor said nervously, Mr. Vasconcelos wants to see you in his office. Her pulse spiked. He's here? He just arrived? She hesitated, smoothing her skirt before walking down the long hallway. The glass doors at the end reflected her trembling form. She wasn't ready. Not for this confrontation, not for the way her heart reacted to him. When she entered, Leonardo was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. He turned as soon as he heard her footsteps. Isabella, just her name, spoken in that low, steady tone, made her chest tighten. "I'm sorry about the chaos," he began. "The press never misses a chance to twist the truth." She nodded slowly. "They think I'm your girlfriend." A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. Would that be such a terrible thing? Her breath caught. "Leonardo," he smiled faintly and gestured for her to sit. "You handled last night with grace, but I owe you an explanation." She lowered herself into the chair, unable to look away from him. His presence was overwhelming, quiet power mixed with something warm, almost vulnerable. "I didn't plan to go to that event," he said, "but when I saw what Daniel was doing, I couldn't stand by. You didn't deserve that." Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to pretend we were—" "I wasn't pretending," he interrupted softly. The air between them froze. Isabella blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "What do you mean?" Leonardo stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Years ago, before you left the company, I wanted to tell you how I felt, but you disappeared without a word." Her heart pounded. "You were my boss, Leonardo. People already talked. I didn't want to ruin your reputation, or mine." He exhaled slowly. "So you chose to break both our hearts instead." Silence filled the room. The city stretched endlessly behind the glass, but all Isabella could see was him, the man she had once dreamed about but never dared to love. "Finally," she said. "That was a long time ago." "Not for me," he said. His tone was quiet but raw. "Seeing you last night, it felt like the years between us never existed." Her eyes stung. She wanted to say something, anything, but emotion caught in her throat. Leonardo's gaze softened. "I don't expect you to feel the same, but I won't let anyone hurt you again. Not Daniel, not the world." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Everything all right, my love?" "Oui," he whispered again. The same words as last night, but this time filled with meaning. Isabella froze, tears threatening to fall. And in that moment she realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. She had never stopped loving him. The morning after the gala, the city's elite still buzzed with whispers. What had happened at the Vasconcelos Foundation's charity event had spread faster than any headline. The moment Leonardo Vasconcelos had stepped forward, placed his hand on Isabella Martins's waist, and called her "my love," it had stunned everyone into silence. That silence, though brief, had been the loudest sound in the entire ballroom. Now everyone wanted to know who Isabella was. Some said she was his secret fiancée. Others claimed she was the reason Leonardo had rejected countless socialites. And some, the cruelest ones, said she had trapped him with pity and tears. At the same time, Daniel sat alone in his penthouse, his anger sharp as broken glass. The woman he'd humiliated, the one he had discarded like she was nothing, had just been defended by the most powerful man in the city. The humiliation burned deeper than pride could contain. "Enjoy your victory, Isabella," he muttered, staring at the flashing headlines on his tablet, "because I'll make sure it doesn't last." Meanwhile, at Vasconcelos Tower, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Isabella stepped out, her heart pounding. Every pair of eyes followed her as she walked through the sleek modern lobby. Whispers floated behind her, half envy, half curiosity. "That's her, the one from the party. She's beautiful in person." Her hands trembled as she pressed the button for the executive floor. She didn't like attention, especially not this kind. When she entered Leonardo's office, he was already there, standing near his desk, a cup of coffee untouched beside a stack of reports. "Good morning," he said calmly, as if the world hadn't been set on fire by what happened between them. "Good morning," she replied quietly. "You've seen the articles?" He nodded. "Every one of them." "And you're not angry?" she asked, confused. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Why would I be? I meant what I said last night. If the world misunderstood, let them." Her cheeks flushed. "But you're bored, your reputation—" "Let me worry about that," he said gently. "I only care about what's true between us." The words hung in the air like a confession. Isabella looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "Leonardo, please don't make this harder," she whispered. "Whatever you felt before, it doesn't change the past. We come from different worlds." He took a step closer, his voice low. "You think I don't know that? I built my world, Isabella. You survived yours. That's what makes us the same." Her breath caught. For a moment, all the noise of gossip and scandal faded, replaced by the quiet thrum of something raw, something real. Then his assistant knocked softly on the door. "Sir, the press conference is ready." Leonardo turned to Isabella. "They'll ask questions about last night," he said. "I won't deny anything." Her eyes widened. "You can't. That will only make it worse." "Worse for whom?" he asked, almost teasingly. "For them, maybe, not for me." Before she could protest again, he was gone, walking toward the conference room with the confidence of a man who feared nothing. 15 minutes later, Isabella watched from the hallway as flashes of cameras lit up the air. A journalist shouted, "Mr. Vasconcelos, who was the woman with you last night?" Leonardo didn't hesitate. His expression was calm, resolute. "She's someone who deserves respect," he said firmly, "and anyone who thinks otherwise can take their business elsewhere." The crowd erupted in chaos, questions, cameras, noise. But amidst it all, Isabella stood frozen. For the first time in her life, someone had stood up for her, not out of pity, but because she mattered. Back at his penthouse, Daniel watched the live broadcast, his face twisting with fury. "You think you can protect her, Vasconcelos?" he growled. "You have no idea what she's hiding." He closed his laptop and poured himself a drink, a cruel smile curving his lips. It was time for the game to begin. The flash of cameras followed Isabella like a storm. No matter where she turned, there were lenses, microphones, and voices calling her name. She had never been hunted like this before. The press was relentless, hungry for scandal, for any crack in the story of the mysterious woman who tamed the city's coldest CEO. By noon, she couldn't breathe. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her social media was flooded with strangers' opinions, praise mixed with poison. She turned it off and leaned against the window of the office, her reflection pale and tired. Then came the soft knock. "Isabella?" Leonardo's voice, calm, steady, but behind it, a quiet storm. She turned, relief washing over her as he stepped inside. Sleeves rolled up, his tie slightly loosened. He looked as though he hadn't slept either, yet his eyes carried that same unshakable composure. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "The media's outside. If they see you with me again—" "Let them," he interrupted gently. "They've already written their stories. I'd rather give them something true to talk about." But before she could reply, he walked closer. "I've arranged for a car. We're leaving through the underground exit. You need to get away from this madness for a while." Her brows furrowed. "Leonardo, I can't just disappear. I have work, responsibilities. You also have limits," he said firmly. "You're not a headline, Isabella. You're a person. And right now, that person needs peace." His tone left no room for argument. For the first time in days, she let herself surrender, not out of weakness, but because being near him made her feel safe. The elevator ride down was silent, except for the soft hum of the machinery. When the doors opened, a sleek black car waited. The driver nodded, then disappeared as Leonardo opened the door for her himself. As the car pulled away from the Vasconcelos Tower, Isabella glanced back, at the building that symbolized power, at the life she was still trying to rebuild, and at the chaos she was leaving behind. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "Somewhere no one will bother you," he said, eyes fixed on the road. After a few moments, she noticed the route, out of downtown, past the city lights, into the quiet edge of the coast. The ocean began to appear on the horizon, vast and calm. When they arrived, the car stopped in front of a private villa overlooking the sea. Waves crashed gently against the cliffs below. She turned to him, confused. "Leonardo, this is—" "Mine," he said simply. "I come here when I need to think. No reporters, no calls, just silence." Her breath caught at the view, endless blue, wind in her hair, peace she hadn't felt in months. "This place is beautiful," she whispered. "So are you," he said, without hesitation. The words hung between them like sunlight. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Isabella smiled faintly, shaking her head. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" His tone was soft but certain. "It's true." She looked away, hiding the warmth rising in her chest. "You're impossible." He chuckled quietly. "And yet you're here." They stood in silence, the sound of waves filling the air. For the first time in years, Isabella allowed herself to breathe freely. No judgment, no fear, no mask. Just the sound of the ocean, and the man beside her who, without asking, had given her back a piece of herself she thought was gone forever. But miles away, in the heart of the city, Daniel's revenge was already in motion. He sat in front of his computer, a smirk curving his lips as he opened a file. A secret from Isabella's past, something she had buried deeply. "Let's see how your new hero handles the truth," he whispered. The waves outside the villa kept crashing peacefully, unaware that the calm before the storm had already begun. The sun was already sinking behind the ocean when Leonardo and Isabella left the villa. The golden light stretched across the car's windows, painting the world in quiet shades of amber and blue. Neither of them spoke for the first few minutes. The hum of the engine and the sound of the waves outside were the only things filling the silence. Isabella sat beside him, her fingers tracing invisible lines on her knee. The peaceful drive felt surreal, too calm for everything that had happened. Her heart still carried the weight of the headlines, the whispers, the humiliation Daniel had tried to cause. Leonardo glanced at her, his expression soft but thoughtful. "You've been quiet." She smiled faintly. "I think I've had enough noise for one lifetime." He nodded, understanding. "I know what that feels like." She turned to him, curious. "Do you? You seem like the kind of man who doesn't let anything get to him." Leonardo let out a quiet laugh, the kind that sounded like disbelief. "Everyone has something that gets to them, even me." "Then tell me," she said gently, "what gets to you?" His grip on the steering wheel tightened for a moment. He didn't answer immediately. "Failure," he finally said. "Losing control, watching something and or someone slip away when I could have stopped it." There was something in his voice, not pride, but pain. It made her chest tighten. "Is that what happened with me?" she asked softly. Leonardo looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. "You think you were my failure?" "I disappeared. You didn't stop me," she said, "so maybe I was." He sighed. "You were never my failure, Isabella. You were my reason for doing everything better. But you left before I could tell you that." Her breath caught. She looked away, blinking fast. "I left because staying would have destroyed me. You had your world, your empire, and I was just another employee." People already whispered. "I didn't care about whispers," he said quietly. "I cared about you." The car slowed as they reached the coastal highway, the sea shimmering to their left. The silence between them was thick, heavy with all the words they had never said. Isabella's voice trembled. "You make it sound so simple, but for me it wasn't. I lost everything because of Daniel, my name, my confidence, my reputation. I couldn't risk losing what little I had left." Leonardo's expression hardened, not with anger, but with guilt. "I should have protected you back then." She shook her head. "You didn't owe me anything." "I did," he said firmly, "because I knew what he was doing. I knew Daniel was using you, and I did nothing." Her eyes widened. "You knew?" He nodded slowly. "I heard rumors, saw the way he treated you, the way he talked about you behind closed doors. I wanted to intervene, but you left before I had the chance." Isabella's heart pounded. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because it wouldn't have changed what you needed to do," he said softly. "You needed to leave, to find yourself again. I just wish I'd found the courage to stop him sooner." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled faintly through them. "You always had the courage, Leonardo. You just didn't know where to put it." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes filled with something deep, regret, longing, and an affection that had never faded. "You think I don't know that," he said quietly. "The moment I saw you last night standing there facing him again, I realized I never stopped thinking about you." The confession hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Isabella swallowed hard. "Leonardo?" He turned his gaze back to the road, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know the truth." They drove in silence again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was full of everything they couldn't say yet. Outside, the last rays of sunlight disappeared beneath the horizon, leaving only the soft glow of city lights ahead. Isabella finally spoke. "Maybe it's time we both stop running from what happened." Leonardo glanced at her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Maybe it's time we stop running and start fighting." She met his gaze, her heart unsteady. "Together," he nodded. "Together." But far away, in Daniel's penthouse, the glow of his computer screen reflected a name. Isabella Martins, confidential file. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Let's see if your new savior still wants to fight for you when he learns the truth." The next morning broke quietly over the coast. The ocean shimmered silver under the first light, and for a few moments the world felt calm, too calm, almost as if holding its breath before something inevitable. Isabella sat on the terrace of the villa, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The waves below moved endlessly, whispering against the cliffs, but her thoughts were far from peaceful. Last night's conversation kept replaying in her mind. Leonardo's confession, his guilt, the truth he had held back for years. "I knew Daniel was using you." She had thought she'd buried that pain long ago, but now it was alive again, burning quietly beneath her skin. Behind her, footsteps approached. Leonardo appeared, his expression soft but serious, a folder in his hand. "You're up early," he said gently. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Too many ghosts in my head." He hesitated before placing the folder on the table. "Then I should probably add one more." She frowned, eyes narrowing. "What is that?" "Background checks. My team sent me updates on Daniel's recent activities." She tensed. "Why are you still investigating him?" "Because men like him don't stop unless they're stopped," Leonardo said simply. "And I think he's planning something." He opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, financial transfers, messages. Isabella scanned them, her blood running cold. "He's been contacting reporters," she murmured. "He's digging into me." Leonardo nodded grimly. "And he found something." She froze. "What do you mean?" He met her eyes, his tone careful but direct. "There's a file. He claims it's from your previous company. Documents, contracts, something that could misrepresent your past." Her hands trembled. "Oh no. What is it, Isabella?" Her breath hitched. "When Daniel and I worked together, I signed papers under his name. I didn't know at the time that he was committing fraud. He made it look like I was involved. When I found out, I left, but I never proved my innocence. If he still has those documents—" Leonardo's eyes darkened with fury. "He's planning to use them against you." She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "He always said if I ever embarrassed him, he'd ruin me." Leonardo stood, pacing the terrace, his jaw clenched. "Then he's going to try to make me believe you were part of it. That's how he'll hit us both." She looked up at him, heart pounding. "You believe me, don't you?" He stopped walking and turned to her. "Of course I do." But behind his eyes, she saw a flicker, not of doubt, but of calculation. The businessman in him was already thinking 3 moves ahead. "Leonardo," she said softly, "I can't let you get involved in this. He'll drag your company, your reputation." "I don't care about any of that," he interrupted sharply. "You're not alone in this anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "You keep saying that, but you don't know what he's capable of." Leonardo stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you don't know what I'm capable of when someone I care about is threatened." His words carried both promise and danger. The tension between them thickened, part fear, part longing, part something neither of them dared to name. Before Isabella could answer, Leonardo's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression shifted instantly. "It's from my security division," he said. "They found something on Daniel." He tapped the message open, his eyes narrowing as he read. Then quietly he muttered, "Of course. It was him." "What do you mean?" Isabella asked, her pulse quickening. Leonardo looked up slowly. "The leak last year, the one that cost my company millions. It wasn't a competitor, it was Daniel." She gasped. "But why?" He exhaled heavily, his jaw tightening. "Because I fired his father 5 years ago for embezzlement. Daniel's been holding a grudge ever since. You were just the weapon he used to get close to me." The world seemed to tilt beneath her. So all of this, me, him, the humiliation, it was never about love. Leonardo's gaze softened. "No, it was about revenge." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "And now he's coming for both of us." Leonardo placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then let him come," he said quietly. "He's not the only one with secrets." She met his eyes, fear and trust colliding in her chest. "What are you going to do?" He smiled faintly, a dangerous, knowing smile. "What I should have done years ago." Far away in his penthouse, Daniel watched the same sunrise, the city glowing beneath him. His phone vibrated with a message from an anonymous number. "Everything's ready. The file will leak tomorrow." Daniel smirked. "Then let's see how perfect the billionaire and his little love story look when the world knows what she's done." Rain fell softly against the glass walls of Leonardo's office, blurring the skyline of São Paulo into streaks of grey and gold. It was nearly midnight, yet the lights inside Vasconcelos Tower still burned, sharp, cold and relentless, like the man who owned them. Leonardo stood near the window, phone in hand, reading the latest report from his security team. The words on the screen were confirmation of what he already suspected. Daniel had everything ready. The fake documents, the leak, the perfect setup. Behind him, the elevator doors slid open. Isabella stepped out, her face pale but determined. She wore a simple black dress, rainwater glistening on her hair. "You said it was urgent," she said quietly. Leonardo turned. The exhaustion in his eyes was hidden behind control, but not completely. "It is. Sit down." She hesitated before taking a seat at the long glass table. "What happened?" He placed a folder in front of her. "Tomorrow morning, every major business outlet will publish a story accusing you of fraud. They'll say you forged contracts under Daniel's name to cover embezzlement at your old firm. They'll call you a liar, a criminal." Her throat tightened. "And there's no way to stop it. I've already contacted the outlets. They won't listen. Daniel's feeding them documents that look legitimate." She stared at the folder as if it might burn through her fingers. "So it's over?" "No." Leonardo's tone was sharp. "Not yet." He walked around the table and placed a pen beside her hand. "I've prepared something that might turn this around." Isabella frowned, confused. "A contract?" "Yes," he said. "A legal partnership between us. If you sign it, you become a senior consultant for Vasconcelos Group, officially tied to my company. The story will lose power. They can't accuse you of fraud if I've publicly endorsed you and vouched for your integrity." She blinked. "You'd risk your entire company's reputation for me." Leonardo leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "I'm not risking anything. I'm protecting what matters." Her chest tightened. "Leonardo, it's not charity," he interrupted. "It's strategy. If we move fast, we control the narrative. And if Daniel attacks you, he attacks me, which means I can take him down legally." She stared at the pen, her heart pounding. "And if I refuse?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Then you'll face him alone, and I don't want that." The silence between them grew heavy. The rain outside turned fierce, streaking against the glass like falling silver. Finally, Isabella whispered, "Why are you doing this for me?" Leonardo's eyes softened, his walls lowering for the briefest moment. "Because I should have protected you the first time, and because somewhere between the lies and the chaos, I started caring more than I should." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, the air between them shifted, fragile, intimate, almost dangerous. She looked down at the contract again, her name beside his, the lines that would bind their futures together. "If I sign this," she said slowly, "the world will think we're partners." He smiled faintly. "We already are." Her hand trembled as she took the pen. She signed, the ink dark and final on the page. When she looked up, Leonardo was watching her, not as a businessman, but as a man who knew the storm they were about to face together. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "From this moment on," he said, "no one touches you. Not Daniel, not the press, no one." Her heart beat faster. "And if the truth comes out, then we face it together." A flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting their shadows against the glass. In that moment, Isabella realized something terrifying and beautiful. This contract wasn't just protection, it was a promise. Outside, the storm raged harder, as if the world itself knew a war was about to begin. Meanwhile, across the city, Daniel smiled at his reflection in a dark window, a glass of whiskey in hand. He had no idea that the woman he planned to destroy had just signed her way into power. The morning arrived grey and heavy, as though the sky itself knew what was coming. Isabella sat at her desk in the newly assigned Vasconcelos group office, coffee untouched, heart pounding. Her eyes kept flicking to the clock, each tick amplifying the tension in the room. Then her phone vibrated. Breaking news. Alleged fraud scandal rocks São Paulo's corporate world. Her stomach dropped. Her hands trembled as she opened the notification. Screenshots, fake contracts, anonymous claims, all pointing to her. The world she had just tried to rebuild seemed to collapse in an instant. The office lights seemed too bright, the chatter around her too loud. She felt like she was standing in the eye of a storm, watching it rage through every headline, every tweet, every message. And then came the murmurs. Isabella Martins. That's her? The CEO's new consultant? Colleagues' eyes darted toward her, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Whispers filled the room like a creeping fog. Her chest tightened. She wanted to run, to hide. But before she could move, Leonardo appeared in the doorway, calm, imposing, almost magnetic. "Everything all right?" His voice was calm, almost teasing, but she saw the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the headlines. "They're calling me a fraud," she whispered, feeling tears sting her eyes. Leonardo stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "And you?" he asked softly. I don't know," she admitted. "It's all over the news. I can't control it." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't need to. Not anymore." But no buts," he interrupted gently but firmly. "I've already handled this." She looked at him, confusion and fear blending in her gaze. "Handled? How?" Leonardo gestured toward the office doors. A team of PR specialists, legal advisors, and journalists were gathering in the conference room. "They're rewriting the narrative. Every major outlet has been contacted, statements verified. The documents are proven false. By tonight, the world will know the truth." Her shoulders sagged, relief and disbelief mixing. You did all this for me?" He gave her a small, confident smile. "Not for you, for us. And for the simple fact that no one humiliates someone I care about without consequences." The words hit her harder than any headline ever could. Her heart pounded, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. Yet just as relief began to bloom, a notification appeared on Leonardo's phone. His eyes darkened instantly. "What is it?" Isabella asked. "Daniel's latest move. A cryptic message. You can't save her forever, Vasconcelos. Truth always comes out." Leonardo's expression hardened, a dangerous calm settling over him. "He thinks this is over," he muttered. "It's only just begun." Isabella's hand found his, gripping it tightly. "Then we fight. Together." He nodded, his gaze intense, unwavering. "Together. No one destroys what belongs to me. Not him, not the world." Outside, the city buzzed with chaos, flashing screens and murmuring crowds. Inside, for the first time, Isabella realized something terrifying and exhilarating. She wasn't alone anymore. And in that moment, she began to understand the depth of what Leonardo had meant when he called her my love. Across the city, Daniel clenched his fist, the beginnings of a new plan forming in his mind. But for once, he had underestimated the storm he had awakened. The rain had started again, pounding against the windows of the Vasconcelos group headquarters like a warning drum. Isabella's heart raced as she walked through the lobby, flanked by security, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Daniel had arrived. Not a rumor, not a threat. He was here in person, and the air seemed to thrum with danger. Leonardo was already waiting in the executive office, leaning casually against the polished desk, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. The calm, confident man who had protected her all week now exuded something more, a quiet storm, barely contained. "He's waiting in the conference room," Leonardo said, his voice low but steady. "I suggest you stay close to me." Isabella nodded, though fear clawed at her chest. She had faced humiliation, whispers, and lies, but facing Daniel directly was different. His presence alone carried the weight of every manipulation, every betrayal, every threat he had ever made. They entered the conference room. Daniel sat at the head of the long table, smirking as though he already owned the moment. The fluorescent lights reflected off the polished surface, casting harsh shadows that made him look sharper, more dangerous. "Well, well," Daniel began, his tone dripping with mockery, "if it isn't the little heroine protected by the great Vasconcelos." Isabella squared her shoulders, refusing to step back. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, voice trembling slightly but firm. Daniel laughed, sharp and cruel. "You should be. Do you even realize what you've signed yourself up for?" Leonardo stepped forward, his presence magnetic and intimidating. "You will say nothing unless it's the truth," he said quietly, but every word carried a weight that made Daniel falter for a split second. Daniel's smirk wavered. "And you think your money, your influence, protects her?" Leonardo's gaze didn't leave him. "It's not money, it's respect. And if you think she's alone in this, that you can intimidate her, you've already lost." For the first time, Daniel's eyes flicked toward Isabella. She met his gaze steadily, letting go of the fear that had gripped her all morning. The woman he thought would crumble now stood taller, bolstered by the man beside her. "You don't get it, do you?" Daniel hissed. "She was mine to ruin, and now, because of you, she's untouchable." Leonardo's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "Untouchable because I refuse to let anyone harm her, including you." The tension in the room became almost unbearable. Every breath, every movement seemed magnified. Isabella could feel the storm building between the two men, one fueled by obsession and revenge, the other by love and unwavering protection. Then Leonardo leaned slightly closer to her, voice a whisper meant only for her. "Stay calm. Trust me." Isabella nodded, inhaling deeply. For the first time, fear mingled with something else, adrenaline, courage, and a fierce clarity. She was not just a victim anymore, she was a player in this game, and Leonardo was her shield. Daniel rose abruptly, knocking his chair back. "You may have won the headlines, Vasconcelos, but the war isn't over. She'll fall, and when she does, I'll be there to make sure you both pay." Leonardo stepped forward, towering over him, a quiet menace in every movement. "Try me," he said simply. The air was electric. Outside, the rain hammered harder against the glass. Inside, the first battle lines were drawn. And Isabella realized, with a mix of fear and exhilaration, that her life had just changed forever. For the first time in years, she didn't feel powerless. She felt protected, seen, and dangerously alive. The lights of the Vasconcelos tower glimmered like distant stars against the night sky, but inside Leonardo's office, the atmosphere was far from calm. The hum of the city below was drowned out by the soft tapping of his fingers against the mahogany desk. Isabella stood by the window, her reflection overlapping with the glittering skyline. Though the confrontation with Daniel earlier had left her shaken, she felt something she hadn't in months. A strange, thrilling sense of empowerment. She wasn't alone. Leonardo's voice cut through the silence. "We need a plan. Daniel's not just attacking you. He's targeting the company now. Every move he makes is calculated." She turned toward him, anxiety and admiration warring in her eyes. What can we do? He already has the files, the reporters. He's everywhere. Leonardo paced slowly, every step deliberate, his mind racing through strategies. We take the narrative back, not just for you, but for the company. We make it clear, legally, publicly, and unmistakably, that Daniel's allegations are false. How? She asked, her voice soft but firm. He stopped and fixed his gaze on her, eyes intense. First, we secure evidence proving the documents are fake. Then we release it strategically. Press releases, interviews, statements from executives. We corner him before he can act again. Isabella nodded, swallowing hard. And you? Won't it be risky for you? Leonardo's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. I've faced bigger storms. You, however, deserve protection more than anyone I've ever known. Her heart fluttered at the words, but she forced herself to focus. What about Daniel's father? You said this started because of him? Yes, he said grimly. He embezzled millions and I fired him. Daniel's obsession started there. Everything else, the lies, the files, the attacks, are just extensions of that grudge. But we can use it against him, legally, strategically, emotionally. She felt a mix of fear and awe. This was bigger than she imagined, bigger than herself, bigger than Daniel. Leonardo stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's one more thing. Daniel has underestimated you. He thinks you're fragile, scared, alone. But I've seen what you're capable of. The courage, the strength, the fire. We'll use that. Isabella met his eyes. You really believe that I can fight him? I don't just believe it, he said. I know it, and I'll be right beside you every step of the way. For the first time, her chest felt lighter, not because the danger had vanished, but because she realized she was not facing it alone. Leonardo reached across the desk, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You've changed since last night. The woman I met at that gala isn't the same one I see now. You're stronger, smarter, ready. Her cheeks flushed. Ready for what? To fight for yourself, he said softly, and for us. Daniel thinks this is just about revenge, but he doesn't realize he's about to lose control over you, over me, over the story he's trying to write. Outside, the city pulsed with lights and activity, unaware of the storm brewing in boardrooms and hearts alike. Isabella took a deep breath. Then let's start. Together. Leonardo's smile was a mix of relief and determination. Together, he confirmed, his hand brushing hers on the desk. And in that moment, she realized something thrilling. The CEO's plan wasn't just about defeating Daniel. It was about reclaiming her life, her dignity, and something far more dangerous, her heart. The office was quiet, almost eerily so. Outside, the city's lights glittered against the night, but inside Vasconcelos Tower, tension crackled like electricity. Leonardo sat behind his desk, reviewing documents and messages with surgical precision. Isabella stood nearby, her hands clasped in front of her, heart pounding with anticipation. Tonight is the night, Leonardo said, his tone calm but edged with authority. We strike first. Daniel won't see it coming. Isabella swallowed hard. And if he does, what if this backfires? Leonardo's gaze softened. It won't. I've already anticipated every move he could make, every lie, every leak, every manipulation. He won't have the advantage this time. Her breath caught. The thought of facing Daniel head-on filled her with both fear and exhilaration. And me? She asked. Where do I fit in? You're not just a witness, he said firmly. You're a player. Your statement, your presence, your courage, that's what will make this strike unstoppable. And I need you calm and focused. Do you trust me? She nodded, a flicker of determination lighting her eyes. I trust you. Leonardo smiled faintly, a rare softness in his usually unreadable expression. Good, then let's begin. Minutes later, they entered the conference room where a select group of journalists had gathered. The room smelled of polished wood and faint perfume, a stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Leonardo's presence alone seemed to command attention. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice steady, magnetic. "We're here to clarify recent allegations against Isabella Martins. The accusations circulating online and in various media outlets are false, completely fabricated." Isabella watched as he outlined the evidence: verified contracts, authenticated communications, and clear proof that Daniel had manipulated every document. Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and awe. Leonardo wasn't just protecting her, he was dismantling the entire web of lies Daniel had spun. A journalist raised a hand. "Mr. Vasconcelos, can you guarantee these are accurate?" Leonardo's eyes locked with hers briefly before answering. "Yes, and more importantly, Isabella Martins herself is here to speak." Her pulse raced as she stepped forward, facing the reporters and the cameras. For a moment her hands shook, but then she felt Leonardo's gaze, unwavering, protective. She drew a deep breath. "I was never involved in any fraud," she said firmly. "Everything Daniel has claimed is false. I left the company when I discovered his misconduct, and I have evidence to prove it. I am not a criminal, and I will not be silenced by lies." The cameras flashed as her words echoed in the room. Leonardo stepped to her side, hand brushing lightly against hers, a subtle but grounding reassurance. Daniel, watching from a distance through his network of contacts, clenched his fists. The first strike had been delivered, and it had landed with precision. Isabella had spoken. Leonardo had controlled the narrative, and the world was beginning to see the truth. But Daniel's smirk returned, cold and calculating. "They think this is over," he muttered to himself. "But it's only just beginning, and when they least expect it, I'll make them pay. Both of them." Meanwhile, Isabella and Leonardo exited the press conference together. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. She turned to him, relief and gratitude flooding her chest. "You were incredible," she whispered. He smiled, brushing her hair back gently. "No, you were incredible. You stood up, spoke the truth. I just made sure the world heard it." Her heart thumped. I've never felt this strong before." "Good," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "Because the storm isn't over, but together we're unstoppable." The city around them buzzed with noise and lights, unaware that tonight marked the beginning of a war, a battle of power, deceit, and love that would change both their lives forever. The night had fallen heavy over São Paulo, blanketing the city in shadows and streetlights. Inside the Vasconcelos Tower, the atmosphere was tense, a quiet before the storm. Leonardo sat in his office, the glow from multiple monitors casting sharp lines across his focused face. Every piece of information, every contact, every report was scrutinized with military precision. Isabella stood beside him, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the desk. She felt restless, aware that this calm was only temporary. "Do you really think he'll try something tonight?" she asked, her voice a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Leonardo didn't look away from the screen. "Daniel never rests. He's patient, dangerous, and unpredictable. The leak was just the beginning. He's planning his next move, something bigger. Something hidden." Her stomach tightened. "Hidden?" "Yes," he said, finally turning to meet her gaze. "He's smart. He won't attack openly. He'll try to catch us off guard. That's why we need to stay 2 steps ahead." A sudden alert flashed across the monitors. Leonardo's fingers flew across the keyboard. Here it is, a flagged transaction, one of Daniel's accounts moving funds into a shell company. He's planning something financially, but it could be a trap, too. He's testing our response. Isabella's pulse quickened. "What does that mean for us?" Leonardo stepped closer, his presence both protective and commanding. "It means we have to anticipate his moves before he even makes them. And Isabella, you must be careful. Daniel thrives on fear and distraction. If he can make you doubt yourself, he wins." Her heart raced, but determination flared within her. "Then we won't give him the chance." Outside the tower, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the silent war brewing in the skyscraper. Inside, Leonardo and Isabella strategized, plans, contingencies, and countermeasures filling the room like a tactical chess game. "You'll stay here," Leonardo instructed. "I'll handle any immediate threats, but you must be ready to act if he tries to involve you directly." Her eyes narrowed. "Leonardo, I want to help. I don't want to hide anymore." He hesitated, a rare vulnerability flickering in his eyes. "You're already a target, Isabella. I can't risk you getting hurt." She took a deep breath, stepping closer. "Then let me stand beside you. I've survived worse than him. I won't be a liability." He studied her, a mixture of admiration and concern in his gaze. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well, but stay close. Watch, learn, and trust me. One misstep and—" "I know," she interrupted, her voice steady. "I trust you." Suddenly, the office lights flickered. The monitors went blank for a heartbeat, then restored. Leonardo's expression hardened. "He's testing our systems. Daniel's not just attacking publicly, he's probing our defenses. This is exactly the hidden threat I warned you about." Isabella's fingers gripped the desk. "What now?" Leonardo's jaw tightened. "Now we hit him where it hurts, and he won't see us coming. Not this time." A faint sound of movement echoed in the building, too subtle for anyone else to notice. Leonardo's hand instinctively brushed against Isabella's, a silent reassurance in the midst of danger. "We have to be ready," he said quietly. Together. Outside, the storm clouds gathered, lightning illuminating the city in brief, blinding flashes. For the first time, Isabella realized the battle against Daniel wasn't just legal or professional. It was personal, and if they survived it, nothing would ever be the same. The city slept under a thin veil of fog, its streets slick from the early evening drizzle, but inside the heart of São Paulo's financial district, danger had already arrived. Leonardo's office was quiet, the only sound the steady hum of computers and the occasional tap of his fingers against the desk. Isabella stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the lights of the city blur into streaks under the rain. Suddenly, Leonardo's phone buzzed. His expression darkened instantly. "He's made his move," he said, barely above a whisper. "What kind of move?" Isabella asked, tension coiling in her chest. "A trap," he replied, eyes locked on the screen. "Daniel has orchestrated a meeting. It's fake. Someone posing as an important investor is luring us out. He wants to isolate you and discredit both of us publicly." Isabella's heart pounded. "So, what do we do?" Leonardo moved swiftly, grabbing his coat and keys. "We go, but on our terms. We control the situation. And Isabella," his gaze softened for a fleeting moment, "stay close. Trust me, and don't panic." They exited the building, stepping into the rainy streets. The air was sharp, electric, as if reflecting the tension that had enveloped them. Their black car glided silently through the city, headlights cutting through the fog. At the rendezvous point, a lavish, deserted restaurant, the trap awaited. A sleek car parked nearby, its driver perfectly poised, a briefcase in hand. Leonardo's hand brushed Isabella's as they approached the door. "Watch carefully," he whispered. Inside, the room was staged perfectly. Daniel's hired actor, a man in a tailored suit, greeted them with a rehearsed smile. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. Every detail screamed danger. "Welcome," the man said smoothly. "I hear we have an important business proposition." Leonardo's gaze was unwavering. "We're here for information. Don't waste time." The man opened the briefcase, revealing documents designed to incriminate Isabella. He glanced at her with a mocking smirk. "Looks like your friend here isn't telling the full story." Isabella's heart raced, but Leonardo stepped forward, his presence a shield. "This is a setup," he said quietly, his voice carrying authority. "And it ends now." The man's smirk faltered. Leonardo pulled out his phone, hitting a single button. Instantly, the restaurant doors locked, security footage illuminated the room, and the man realized he had walked straight into a trap. Leonardo's trap. "You underestimated us," Leonardo said, voice low and lethal. "And now Daniel's plan is exposed." Isabella's chest heaved as relief mixed with adrenaline. You knew." "I anticipated every move," Leonardo said calmly. Daniel thrives on control and fear, but this time he walks into a cage of his own making, and we have the keys. The man tried to escape, but security swiftly restrained him. Leonardo turned to Isabella, eyes intense yet tender. See, you're safe, because I protect what matters. She felt her hands tremble, but not from fear, from exhilaration. I can't believe this is happening. Leonardo brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. Believe it, and remember, Isabella, the storm isn't over, but tonight we won. Together. Outside, the rain intensified, washing the city streets clean. Inside, Isabella realized something powerful. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting, and with Leonardo by her side, nothing could touch them. The morning sun cut through the blinds of Leonardo's office, casting stripes of gold across the polished desk. Outside, São Paulo buzzed with the usual chaos, unaware that a battle of power and revenge was unfolding within its towers. Leonardo sat, phone in hand, reviewing the files captured from last night's trap. Daniel's network of lies was extensive. Fake documents, planted contacts, and a calculated smear campaign, but Leonardo had the advantage now. Every move Daniel had made was documented, every deception exposed. Isabella stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the array of screens displaying the captured footage, verified evidence, and incriminating emails. She had never felt more alive. Fear, adrenaline, and a strange exhilaration coursing through her veins. So, what's the plan? She asked, her voice steady, yet carrying an undertone of excitement. Leonardo leaned back, fingers steepled. We go on the offensive. Daniel thinks he's untouchable, but he's blind to one thing: the power of evidence and the truth, wielded at the right moment. We release everything strategically, the documents, the footage, his communications. And we control the narrative. Isabella nodded. And I speak publicly? Yes, Leonardo said firmly. Your statement, supported by undeniable proof, will dismantle his credibility, and he'll have no place to hide. But you must stay composed. Any sign of fear and he'll use it against you. She swallowed hard but met his gaze. I can do this. With you. Leonardo's eyes softened, a rare warmth piercing through his usual intensity. Good, because together we're unstoppable. The press conference was set in a controlled environment, cameras positioned perfectly, journalists briefed in advance. Isabella stood behind the podium, Leonardo beside her, an unspoken shield of protection and authority. Today, Leonardo began, his voice resonant and commanding, we address false allegations that have been circulated by Daniel Souza. Every document, every claim, every accusation has been verified as fabricated. Isabella Martins is innocent. The journalists murmured, cameras flashing. Isabella stepped forward. I was never involved in any wrongdoing. Daniel Souza orchestrated a series of lies to damage my reputation. I have evidence, verified, undeniable evidence proving the truth, and I am ready to show it. Screens behind them displayed emails, contracts, and the footage from the trap, Daniel's own network revealing his manipulation. The room fell silent, the journalists absorbing the magnitude of the revelation. Leonardo's hand brushed lightly against Isabella's back, grounding her as she continued. Daniel's plans relied on fear and deception. But the truth is stronger than any lie. Outside, Daniel received the live feed. His smirk faltered as he realized the trap had turned against him. Every lie he had meticulously crafted was unraveling in real time. Impossible, he muttered, fury flashing in his eyes. How? Leonardo's voice echoed through the conference room one last time. Because no one underestimates the woman I care about. Isabella's heart pounded as adrenaline surged. The room erupted in questions, cameras flashing, reporters scrambling for statements. But for the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt power. She felt vindicated. And beside her, Leonardo's gaze met hers, fierce, protective, and intimate. The counterattack had begun. Daniel's empire of lies was crumbling, and Isabella realized something thrilling. With Leonardo by her side, she could face anything. Outside, the city continued its relentless rhythm, unaware that one of its most dangerous storms had finally been turned back. The city skyline shimmered with the glow of evening lights, but inside Daniel's penthouse, darkness ruled. The air was thick with tension, as though every shadow carried a whisper of revenge. He stood by the window, glass of whiskey in hand, eyes scanning the city below with calculated malice. "They think they've won," he muttered, teeth clenched. "But victory is fleeting. I will make them pay, both of them." His fingers danced over his encrypted laptop, sending orders to trusted operatives. Every plan, every contingency was now in motion. Social media smears, financial sabotage, and a personal confrontation that he knew would rattle even Leonardo. Meanwhile, at Vasconcelos' tower, Leonardo and Isabella prepared for the inevitable. The press conference had exposed Daniel's schemes, but Leonardo knew better than to assume the fight was over. "He's going to escalate," Leonardo said quietly, his eyes scanning multiple security feeds. "Daniel doesn't quit. He's desperate, dangerous, and now humiliated." Isabella's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the cuffs of her blazer. "Then we face him," she said, determination threading through her fear. "Together." Leonardo's gaze softened as he reached for her hand. "Exactly, but we must anticipate his moves. He's bold but reckless when cornered." Hours later, Daniel struck. A coordinated cyber attack temporarily disabled Vasconcelos' security system and leaked misleading financial statements to key media outlets. The storm of misinformation began to spread, and for the first time in weeks, Isabella felt the familiar knot of fear tighten in her chest. "They're trying to make it look like the press conference never happened," she whispered, panic edging her voice. Leonardo's jaw tightened. "Then we hit back, immediately. Contain the leaks, release verified statements, and show the world the truth faster than he can distort it." Within minutes, Leonardo's team neutralized the digital attack, restoring the servers and countering the misinformation. Isabella watched in awe as he orchestrated the strategy like a general commanding an army, precise, confident, unstoppable. But Daniel wasn't finished. He had planned his boldest move yet, a personal confrontation at a gala Isabella was attending under the guise of business networking. He intended to humiliate her in public, leverage old connections, and manipulate the event to make her crumble. Leonardo's expression darkened. "He's going to the gala, and he plans to corner you there." Her pulse quickened. "What do we do?" Leonardo leaned close, voice low and commanding. "We turn the table. You walk in confident with me by your side. Daniel thinks he can intimidate you, but he hasn't accounted for what happens when courage meets strategy. I'll be your shield, Isabella, and when the time comes, your sword." The gala began, chandeliers sparkling above, music floating through the grand hall. Daniel arrived, his gaze locking on Isabella with a predator's intensity. He smirked, believing he still controlled the narrative. Isabella met Leonardo's eyes. The fierce determination in them gave her strength. She stepped forward, poised, confident and unafraid. Leonardo's hand brushed hers, a silent promise that together they were unstoppable. Daniel's smirk faltered for a brief instant, the first hint of doubt in weeks. And in that instant, Isabella realized something profound. Fear was no longer an option. Not when she had the man she loved beside her. The final showdown had begun. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, golden light reflecting off polished marble floors. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the elegance. Isabella stepped into the room, Leonardo at her side, a silent anchor in the sea of opulence. Every eye seemed to fall on her, drawn by her poise and quiet strength. She drew a deep breath, her nerves steadying under Leonardo's steady gaze. Across the room, Daniel lingered near the bar, his smirk sharp and calculating. He watched Isabella, confident that the spectacle he had meticulously orchestrated would humiliate her in front of the city's elite. Leonardo's hand brushed hers lightly, a subtle reassurance. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Let him make the first move, then we respond. Together." The music swelled, and Daniel finally approached, his presence magnetic and intimidating. "Isabella," he said, voice low, dripping with mockery. "Quite the evening, isn't it? Surrounded by people who admire you." She met his gaze steadily, refusing to let his words shake her. "And yet somehow, you still feel the need to be here," she replied coolly. Daniel chuckled, circling slightly as predators do. "I want the world to see you for what you truly are. They think you're innocent, but I know differently." Leonardo stepped forward, his stance commanding attention. "Step back, Daniel. You're done manipulating her, done attacking her. Tonight, you face the consequences." A hush fell over the nearby guests. Leonardo's aura was electric, dangerous, unyielding, and protective. Daniel's smirk wavered, the first sign that his confidence was being challenged. "You think your presence protects her?" Daniel hissed, his eyes flicking between them. Leonardo's smile was faint, cold, precise. "It's not presence, it's control. And tonight, you've lost it." Isabella's pulse raced as she stepped slightly forward, her voice clear and strong. "Daniel, everything you've said, everything you've done, has been exposed. Your lies, your manipulations, your attempts to ruin me, all of it is documented. And tonight, everyone can see it." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Leonardo signaled his team. Screens around the room flickered to life, displaying Daniel's fraudulent communications, falsified contracts, and the very footage that had trapped his operatives. The audience stared, astonished. Daniel's eyes narrowed, fury flashing. He realized the trap had been set for him, and this time it was public. Every lie, every scheme, every attempt to destroy Isabella was laid bare. Leonardo's hand brushed Isabella's as he whispered, "Stay close, watch. Speak only if you need to, I've got this." She felt a rush of adrenaline and pride. No longer was she the frightened target. She was a force, standing strong beside the man who had never let her face danger alone. Daniel stepped back, panic and disbelief mixing in his expression. His smirk was gone, replaced with cold calculation. But it was too late. The crowd had seen the truth. The narrative had shifted irreversibly. Leonardo's voice carried through the room, calm and lethal. "You underestimated us, Daniel. Never again." Isabella's hand found Leonardo's, fingers intertwining as they stood united. Fear and doubt had no place between them anymore. The storm had broken, and they were stronger together, unshakable, victorious. Outside, the city's lights reflected on wet streets, mirroring the glittering triumph inside. Isabella realized, for the first time fully, that she was not just surviving, she was thriving. And with Leonardo by her side, nothing could threaten what they had built together. The gala was over, for Daniel. For Isabella and Leonardo, it was just the beginning. The morning after the gala was calm, almost unreal. The city outside Vasconcelos Tower buzzed with life, yet inside the building, a quiet sense of victory hung in the air. Isabella sat in the corner office, sunlight streaming through the windows, reflecting off the polished glass and marble. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe, truly safe. Daniel's schemes had been exposed. The media coverage now praised her integrity, and Leonardo's protective influence had ensured that every attack had been neutralized. Leonardo entered the room, coat in hand, his usual composed presence softened by something warmer. "Morning," he said, voice low and teasing, but with a warmth she hadn't heard before. Isabella looked up, a smile breaking through. "Morning," she replied, relief and fatigue mingling in her tone. I still can't believe it's over." He walked toward her, leaning casually against the desk. "It's never really over with people like Daniel, but he's on the defensive now. And you? You stood your ground." She laughed softly, a sound of genuine release. "I couldn't have done it without you." Leonardo's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, their space narrowing. "No," he said gently. "You did this. I just made sure no one got in your way. Her cheeks flushed. Still, I felt like I had someone watching my back and protecting me. He smiled faintly, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made her heartbeat quicken. I will always protect you, Isabella. Not because you need it, but because I want to, because I care about you more than I should. Her chest tightened. She had sensed it, felt it growing between them over these weeks of danger and chaos, but hearing him say it made her world tilt. "Leonardo," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. His touch was electric, grounding, intimate. "Isabella, I've never felt this way about anyone, and I won't hide it anymore. You mean more to me than I can put into words." Her eyes shimmered as emotions she had tried to suppress surged forward. I feel the same. I felt it for weeks, but I was too scared. With everything happening, with Daniel." He took her hand gently, holding it firmly. "No more fear. Not with me. You're not alone in this. Ever." Tears threatened, but she smiled through them, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift. "I never imagined this could happen. That I could feel safe, strong, and—" She trailed off, searching for the right word. "And loved," he finished softly, eyes locking with hers. "Yes, loved. Isabella, you've changed me, just as much as I hope I've protected you." For a long moment, they simply held hands, breathing in the calm after the storm. Outside, the city thrummed with life, but inside that office, time seemed to slow, allowing them to simply exist in the quiet intimacy of their connection. Finally, Leonardo leaned closer, voice a whisper meant only for her. "Now that the storm has passed, can I show you how much you mean to me?" Isabella's heart skipped. "Yes," she breathed, closing the distance between them. And as their lips met for the first time, soft, tender, and full of everything they had endured together, Isabella realized something profound. She had survived the chaos, fought her battles, and found love in the storm. The city outside continued its relentless rhythm, but for Isabella and Leonardo, the world had never felt more perfect. They had won the war. Together, the sun rose over São Paulo in a golden haze, painting the skyline in shades of hope and renewal. Isabella stood on the balcony of her new office, high above the bustling streets below, taking in the view. The city felt different today, brighter, full of possibilities. Weeks had passed since the gala. Daniel's schemes were in ruins, his influence over her life eradicated. The media had cleared her name. The Vasconcelos group was thriving under Leonardo's steady hand, and Isabella had begun to carve her own path within the company. Leonardo appeared behind her, coffee in hand, his presence calm yet commanding. "Morning," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Isabella turned, smiling warmly. "Morning? I can't believe how far we've come." He leaned against the railing beside her, gaze on the horizon. "We've been through a storm, but storms make the strongest foundations." She laughed softly, a sound of relief and empowerment. "And look at us, still standing." Leonardo's eyes softened as he turned to her. "You're more than standing, Isabella, you're thriving, and I'm proud of you." Her heart fluttered, but she maintained her composure. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Though she knew the truth, the courage, the intelligence, and the resilience had been hers all along. Leonardo had simply believed in her when others hadn't. He reached out, brushing her hair back gently. "No, you did this. I just made sure the path was clear." And his gaze lingered on hers, intimate and serious. "I'll always be here. Not as your protector only, but as someone who wants to be part of your life, fully, without fear or hesitation." Isabella's chest tightened. "Leonardo, I feel the same. I never thought I could feel safe and loved at the same time." He smiled, his hands gently enclosing hers. "Then let's make sure it stays that way. Together, always." The office doors opened behind them, and colleagues entered with congratulations, smiles, and excitement about a new partnership Leonardo had arranged for Isabella. She had a leadership role now, a voice in decisions, and autonomy in her career. It was everything she had hoped for: independence, respect, and the recognition of her talent. Leonardo stepped back slightly, giving her space, but his hand never left hers. "This is your beginning," he said. "A new chapter, one where you write the story." Isabella felt a surge of pride and anticipation. "It's not just the beginning for me," she said, glancing at him. "It's for us." Leonardo's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "I like the sound of that." Together, they looked out over the city, two figures against a backdrop of skyscrapers and endless possibility. The war was over. The danger had passed, and now they could focus on building a life filled with strength, trust, and love. Isabella's heart swelled. She had survived betrayal, fear, and chaos. She had fought and won, and now, for the first time, she felt unstoppable, professionally, personally, and emotionally. Leonardo squeezed her hand. "Ready to start?" She nodded, a confident, radiant smile lighting her face. "Ready." "Va!" And as the sun climbed higher, spilling light across the city, Isabella and Leonardo stepped forward together, ready to face a future full of promise, passion, and unshakable partnership. The sky over Sao Paulo was painted in hues of pink and gold, the kind of morning that promised new beginnings. Isabella and Leonardo stood side by side on the rooftop terrace of Vasconcelos Tower, the city sprawling endlessly beneath them. A gentle breeze carried the scent of rain-soaked streets, a reminder of the storms they had endured and conquered. "This view, it never gets old," Isabella murmured, leaning slightly into him. Leonardo wrapped an arm around her, a subtle but protective embrace. "Not when you're seeing it with someone worth fighting for," he said, his voice low, warm, and intimate. Isabella smiled, heart swelling. "I never imagined life could feel like this, safe, exciting, full of possibility. And yet, here we are." He turned to face her fully, hands holding hers. "Here we are, because you're fearless, because you didn't let fear or lies define you, and because I couldn't stay away. I needed you in my life, completely, unreservedly." Her breath caught. The weight of everything they had endured, Daniel's schemes, public humiliation, near constant danger, seemed to melt away in that moment. "I needed you too," she admitted softly. "More than I realized. You weren't just my protector. You became my strength." Leonardo's eyes softened, shining with intensity. "Then let's never let go of that strength." Together, a gentle silence settled between them, filled with understanding and shared victory. No words were necessary to communicate what they felt. Love, trust, and an unbreakable bond forged in fire. Then Leonardo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Isabella's eyes widened, breath hitching as he knelt gracefully on one knee. "Isabella," he said, voice steady but full of emotion, "we've survived storms most people couldn't even imagine. We've faced danger, betrayal, and chaos, and we came out stronger. I want to face every sunrise, every challenge, every joy with you. Will you marry me?" Tears brimmed in Isabella's eyes, a mixture of happiness, relief, and pure love. She nodded, unable to find words at first. "Yes," she finally whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Leonardo smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger and standing to pull her into a tender, heart-stopping embrace. The city below seemed to pause, the noise fading into insignificance as they held each other close. "I promise," he whispered against her hair, "to protect you, to fight with you, and to love you forever." "I promise too," Isabella replied, her heart full, her soul finally at peace. "Forever, Leonardo." The world outside continued in its relentless rhythm, but for Isabella and Leonardo, time had stopped. Every fear had been conquered, every battle won, and in that moment they were untouchable, not because life was free of danger, but because they had each other. As the sun climbed higher, spilling light across the city, they stood together on the terrace, hands intertwined, hearts beating in unison. A new chapter had begun, one of love, trust, triumph, and unshakable partnership. No storm could ever separate them again. They had proven that together they were unstoppable. And as the wind carried their laughter across the rooftops, Isabella realized one undeniable truth. This was not just a happy ending. It was the beginning of forever.